I've always been a big fan of Nintendo's Green Dinosaur, and Yoshi's New Island is one of those games that I have really high hopes for. Many of us who grew up in the 90s got to experience the original Yoshi's Island, which debuted on the Super Nintendo back in 1995. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island was one of those games that not only offered up great gameplay, but also had creative boss battles and a soundtrack that I will remember for a lifetime. Hopefully, Yoshi's New Island on the Nintendo 3DS leaves the same lasting impression on me as the Super Nintendo version did. Yoshi's New Island tells somewhat of a familiar tale. A stork is delivering two babies to expecting parents when all of a sudden, BAM! Kamek and his Magic Koopas come crashing in an attempt to snatch up the babies. Unfortunately, one of the babies, which turns out to be Baby Mario, ends up falling down to New Egg Island where he is greeted by a group of Yoshis. While Baby Mario may just be a baby, apparently he has some sort of baby telepathy power, allowing him to easily search out Baby Luigi's location. The Yoshis even have a problem of their own, as Baby Bowser is terrorizing New Egg Island. So, the Yoshis team up with Baby Mario in an effort to not only reunite the babies, but also put an end to Baby Bowser's madness. Yoshi's New Island isn't out to reinvent the wheel. The core gameplay that we've come to know and love is still present in Yoshi's New Island. You're still eating enemies, throwing eggs, collecting flowers, and oh yeah, this is back. At least it doesn't sound as bad as it did in the Super Nintendo version. Regardless, if you don't want to hear Baby Mario's ear-piercing cry, make sure you don't get hit by any enemies. That's the one thing I've always liked about Yoshi's Island. You really can't afford to get hit by any enemies, as you only have a certain amount of time to pick up Baby Mario before Kamek's minions come and take him away. Anyway, past the jumping, the egg throwing, the flower collecting, the crying, Yoshi's New Island still has plenty to offer. One of the new features in Yoshi's New Island is a giant egg, otherwise known as the Mega Egg Dozer. Nope. Couldn't make that up. The Mega Egg Dozer is comparable to the Mega Mushroom in New Super Mario Bros. It's nothing more than a giant egg that practically destroys everything in its path. It's a pretty cool addition because not only does it destroy everything within its path, but you can also earn up to 3 1-ups depending on how much you actually destroy. Past the Mega Egg Dozer, Yoshi's New Island pretty much sticks with the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as Yoshi's New Island remains relatively similar to the previous titles in the franchise. Probably the first thing you noticed when you started watching this video review was the visuals. Yoshi's New Island has a new coat of paint compared to the Super Nintendo and Nintendo DS titles. The visuals look like they were hand-drawn with chalk or crayon. They definitely give the vibe that this game was designed for a younger audience, but don't let that stop you from checking the game out. To be honest, the visuals aren't my favorite, but I really don't mind them either. Actually, I find them to be rather relaxing. To go along with the rather relaxing visuals is a calm yet catchy soundtrack. I won't lie, I wasn't a big fan of the soundtrack at first, but it ultimately ended up growing on me. Oh yeah, since this is a Nintendo 3DS title, you're probably wondering how the 3D looks. To be honest, I find it hard for 3D effects on 2D platformers to be anything more than just platforms and enemies popping out from the background, so you certainly won't notice the 3D effects that much on lower settings, but if you're someone who can handle the 3D on higher settings, you'll enjoy the 3D visuals for what they are. To be honest, I really didn't walk away from Yoshi's New Island with too many complaints. Like I said earlier, the graphics might come off as a game that is designed for kids, but it's the game's easy difficulty that will have you feeling this way instead of thinking it. That's not to say that the game doesn't get more difficult as you progress through the levels, but as someone who grew up in the NES era, I never found myself to be all that challenged. Sure, I died a few times, but I ultimately ended up finishing the game with 50 plus lives. Again, maybe that's because I'm used to games like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World that put my platforming skills to the test. Regardless, the game can get challenging in some spots for newcomers, and if you find yourself dying a lot on a level, the game will give you a set of wings to help you progress through the level. Most seasoned vets will probably never have to acknowledge this feature, but it is a nice feature to have for the younger audience. Past the easy difficulty, Yoshi's New Island may feel a bit on the short side for some. The game's single player can be completed in about 7 hours or so, but fear not, as for those of you who are looking for more, you can go back to previous levels and try and collect all of the level's hidden items. Features like this are hit and miss for some players and really aren't enough of an incentive for some players to go back and collect everything. As for me, I've gone back to some levels here and there, but at this stage of the game, Yoshi's New Island is struggling to keep me from moving on. Don't get me wrong, I like picking up and returning to the previous levels, and it's something that has been with the franchise ever since the Super Nintendo release. But again, the collection aspect and replaying levels is a part of the game that really isn't appealing for everyone. In the end, I really enjoyed playing Yoshi's New Island. It's not a great game, nor is it what I would call a system seller, but rather a good game that is definitely worth playing. It might come off as a kid's game to some, but Yoshi's New Island has something to offer for everyone of any age. Trust me, this game is no Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, but it's a good enough game that any Yoshi fan that owns a Nintendo 3DS should experience. Yoshi's New Island may not have the most attractive visuals for some, or even offer up the hardest challenge, but Yoshi's New Island sticks to what the franchise has done best by offering up fun gameplay and some pretty creative boss battles. Yoshi's New Island definitely isn't the strongest title in the series, but it's definitely a game that I enjoyed from start to finish. So my overall score for Yoshi's New Island is a 7.7 out of 10. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you mash the like button and subscribe to the channel. And for more reviews, videos, editorials, and a great podcast, check out Chomp on This Gaming over at chompOnThisGaming.org.